I don't know that the energy in the room changes if you still are traditionally lecturing, for example. Like if you just have 30 bodies versus 100 bodies, but you're still up there talking, unless you have ways of getting discussion going, which I've seen people do really beautiful job with. In our case, it really matters to us that we don't have tiered lecture halls, that we have these big giant classrooms where people can move. So the difference between, say, a 30 and a group of 90 and all these mentors is when they've come to class and everyone has read, which we have a lot of norms around that, when they're ready to do some work and you put them into these small groups of 5 and they're responsible for like producing something at the end of class, the energy level in that space, I mean, the volume, you know, we even have to be careful about being able to hear each other because the volume goes up. Now there's still days when they don't do what they're supposed to do, and you can tell. And one of the ways that we do that is groups create norms. These small groups of 5 and 10 create norms. They're conditions under which someone can get kicked out of the group. And the students decide how many times can someone show up without having read before you kick them out. And some groups will say none. And some groups will say 3 times and then you're out. And in any given semester, about 2 students get kicked out of their group for either not showing up or not doing the work that the other students expect. And I found that it matters to students. They want to be in a group where everybody's doing the work. They're doing a lot more. They're doing more writing. And it's because I can share the load of responding amongst the students and the mentors. It's not just me. So I can have them produce a lot more work. And because the turnaround is so fast, because the mentors are working with just 10, and I want to be clear, they're not grading. They're giving feedback on writing. I do the grading. But because they only have a small group that they're responsible for, sometimes students will turn something in on a Monday and get it back by Friday. And that's very different than a traditional 130 class. It's not uncommon for us to collect a stack of 30 essays and it take 2 weeks before you turn it around. And we know that revision often happens, that it's better if the turnaround's fast, you kind of have some momentum in your writing. So that's been I think an upshot. And I don't know that the students would notice the difference because they haven't had a traditional model. I mean, they get a ton of feedback in that class. They've all said that. I mean, they get a ton of not just my perspective, and I like that. I like that they're not waiting for me to give them feedback, that they take some agency themselves, like, how do I want to move this piece of writing along? What kind of feedback do I need? And then can say to the peer, you know, I'm really worried about my conclusion. Can you read it for that? I mean, they really do develop a vocabulary around giving feedback on writing. I think coming up with goals is key, because you can try to redo everything and you can't in the first iteration. You have to pick a couple things. So our biggest goal was to give an opportunity for people who wanted to be future teachers a chance to be a part of a first-year writing course. So the mentors were a big part of our goal, giving them more professional development opportunity as future teachers to give feedback to student writing and to be in a writing class. Our other goal was to think carefully about how we were going to make sure students could still participate and do a bunch of writing. So what kind of structures did we need to create so that they had writing in lots of different places besides just hard copies handed in? So creating spaces, in this case virtual spaces, or using Vista in more complicated ways, and using more of what Vista had to offer so that they had places where their drafts could live and get feedback. I was really interested in how I did not want to lose a sense of community. So that was, for me, it was 3 things. It really was 3, and that's what I knew I could focus on. Making sure I didn't lose some sense. I mean, a writing class, especially a small writing class, is a little community of writers, and they get comfortable, and I didn't want to lose that. So community participation and the work with the mentors was really our goals. Chris Fosten and I, who are doing the bulk of the jumbo work right now, I mean, we really want to rethink the role of expertise and what it means to be an expert in that class. So I've been playing with the idea of what does it mean to curate. I mean, I see myself as more of a curator in that space, meaning that yes, I have a disciplinary expertise that I need to share with students. I don't want them just mucking around in the dark trying to figure out what to read. I bring to the table, you know, some texts that I know they should consider, authors in our field who are well known, dialogues and conversations, and then you need to let them create meaning out of that. So guys, and even thinking about sharing the workload, giving students control over design, giving students control over the play of ideas in there, and not having to hold all that. And it's a little scary to let go of some of that responsibility. But I think that because they're having to take on, because they're taking it on, you know, really having to think about their own learning, has potential to be, I think, more where we need to move in higher education, not just content delivery, but having students do things with that content and try to create meaning themselves. And maybe the curation metaphor will fall apart at some point, but right now I think of a curator as still having some expertise about what things to put together and what things to offer up for people to, you know, find provocative and to make meaning out of. And still as someone who's got to manage that space, the geography of space and how it's moving and how students are moving in that classroom in any given day or outside of that classroom. My workload hasn't increased. It's just changed. What I do is different. And so my time has shifted from taking home a stack of student writing to making sure that I have structures in place to help everybody else give feedback on that student writing. I saw a real difference in my office hours, was another change I saw in a good way, that they were utilizing my office hours. So for example, a mentor might be concerned about a student in a draft and they're going to send them to see me. Plus they just wanted more contact time, so they were using my office hours in ways that they hadn't before, and that's a good thing, that I could work with them one-on-one. So in some ways I worked with them more one-on-one in a jumbo than I would one-on-one in a class of 30, because they tend to come to my office more. So I would say there's a bunch of front-loading of the work, like putting all these structures in place. I have a lot of ways of managing those groups. I think, as you know, like the use of folders where student work, like notes to me or in-class kind of writes, live in these group fold. I have a lot of ways of just managing the volume of students. So a lot of that's upfront work, creating these sites, folders. I print out attendance sheets that live in the front of group folders, and they kind of keep track of their attendance with the mentors checking it off. And then there's a lot of work at the end, because in our class it's true portfolio grading. So I'm grading portfolios, bodies of work, over 100 pages at the end of the semester, which, I mean, you're always, as a writing instructor, you're always grading work at the end of the semester. So I would say it increased some because I'm looking at such a big volume. You know, the portfolio is really, they're saying to me, here's my best work, and I need to carefully read all those and grade them. So the upfront and the end, there's some work that goes on in it that's more than a class of 30 in a jumbo. But the middle part, the actual during the semester, is just different work. It's not more work. It's just different, and it's about making sure that the structures are in place for that week.